Welcome to the Microsoft 365 Business Technical Fundamentals series. In this video, we will be discussing the assessment of the machines in the existing environment and how we can use that information for planning purposes. Before any large project that includes migrations and upgrades, it's important to get an understanding of what is currently in use in the environment. For this video, we will be focusing on the cloud-based capabilities of Windows Analytics and the long-term value it provides, but it's also important to mention that existing tools that may have been in use previously. The Microsoft Assessment and Planning Toolkit makes it easy to assess the existing IT infrastructure for a variety of technology migration projects, including Windows, Office, and cloud-based migrations. The Assessment and Planning Toolkit is an agentless, automated, multi-product planning and assessment tool for quicker and easier desktop, server, and cloud migrations. Now, MAP provides detailed readiness assessment reports and executive proposals with extensive hardware and software information, as well as actionable recommendations to help organize accelerate their IT infrastructure planning process. It also helps to gather more details on assets that reside within the current environment. Moving forward, however, it's really important to start focusing and understanding how new tools like Windows Analytics can help you in the world of Office as a Service and Windows as a Service, especially with the approaching deadlines with end of support for technologies such as Windows 7 as well as older versions of Office. Windows Analytics is a cloud-based telemetry-driven suite of services. It leverages information collected from deep within Windows, combined with Microsoft's own knowledge of what that information means. That's what it takes to provide actionable recommendations to proactively improve your Windows environment. It's important to understand that Windows Analytics is a suite of tools which includes two different tools which can be used for Windows 10 Pro customers. The first tool is the Windows Analytics Upgrade Readiness, which used to be called Windows Upgrade Analytics. This helps organizations plan for Windows 10 upgrades by helping to identify and resolve app and driver compatibility blockers. The second tool listed is the Windows Analytics Update Compliance, and this is designed to ensure update and anti-malware compliance with reports showing status for all of your devices, what devices might need attention, and more. Now, over time, more capabilities are more than likely going to be added into this. There are additional capabilities for customers who do have Windows 10 Enterprise licenses, but what we'll be focusing on for this one is really just the upgrade readiness component, which is also available to Windows Pro users as well. So, what we're trying to do here is really focus on identifying potential issues when moving from older Windows and software installations. So we'll solely be focusing on the upgrade readiness for the rest of this module. Microsoft's recommended upgrade flow is broken down into three primary steps. In the first step, you need to identify and prioritize the testing of the apps that are important to you. The second step involves reviewing apps with no known issues, with known issues, as well as reviewing potential driver and hardware issues that need to be addressed. The third step is then going through and starting to upgrade the eligible machines based on the criteria that you've identified. So based on machines that may have had no potential issues to begin with, or where you've already gone through and believe that you've successfully mitigated a risk that may have been identified. Rather than walking through all of the different capabilities that are inside of the tool, what we'll be doing here is focusing on a few of the key areas. Devices Ready to Deploy gives a breakdown of the readiness state of the different machines, and you can export that data to assign the appropriate upgrade tasks to your deployment solution or to technicians. The full app inventory doesn't just show you what's installed, but it also gives you details about the number of installs and specifics about the version, publisher, and more. Rather than just focusing on targeting apps with high installs, you can also target apps based on how active those apps really are. This helps you to fine-tune any testing or remediation that needs to take place. App and driver issues tell us the state of the apps, and by drilling down we can see if updates or remediations are available from the software or hardware vendor to help alleviate these issues. One of the capabilities that is valuable within Upgrade Readiness is integration with the Ready for Windows site, which shows how well used the version of the application is that you are targeting for remediation. This doesn't replace the ISV's support statement, however, but it can help you decide on how to approach older apps that may not have been certified to run on Windows 10, or also those that have fallen out of support. One of the reasons that it's important to see what Office add-ins are installed is that part of this upgrade and migration process really should be installing Office 365 Business onto these PCs. This information that you can see on screen will help to identify what older Office add-ins may still be in use. And you might find that even though there are many installed, very few of them may actually still be in active use. In this screenshot, you can see that the add-ins listed are either Windows or Office related, so they really should be low-risk add-ins for you. To finish up this section, it's important to note that because we have access to the underlying data that is collected, we can go through and present it in ways that make sense for your current project requirements. In this case, you can see the items have been ranked and include a combination of apps and drivers. So how do we go through and start configuring Windows Analytics? Well, this isn't something that Microsoft 365 Business will do by default for you. It's something where you do need to go through and get some additional pieces working behind the scenes, but this is one of the benefits of being built on top of the existing cloud platforms that Microsoft provides for customers of all sizes. So we can go through and we can set up an Azure subscription. So generally my recommendation here would be to go through and use the same as your Active Directory environment and the same as your tenant that you're using for your Microsoft 365 Business subscription. This keeps things simple, so it means that you've got that same account that can be used or same set of accounts. So if you're setting up things like multi-factor authentication, etc., these are all the security benefits that automatically start applying to this Azure subscription that you're also setting up. Now, I've provided a link here that will go through the full steps in terms of what's involved in terms of getting you into the Azure portal, maybe if you do need to set up an Azure subscription, for example. Now, with Windows 7 Pro and Windows 8.1 Pro devices, we need to make sure that they're up to date to begin with, to make sure that they can start providing the appropriate telemetry information. And Microsoft provides the upgrade readiness deployment script, which you can download from the link that's listed here, to go through and make sure that first of all you've got the appropriate requirements in place, but also to go through and start triggering that reporting process. So the reporting process itself doesn't generate very much traffic. It's really only just a couple of meg per PC for the initial scan that needs to take place, and additional scans after that really are just adding the additional information that's needed. Now, once we get to Windows 10 Pro devices, if these are domain joined, we can actually use group policy settings to configure the Windows Analytics capabilities, and if they're Intune enrolled, Windows 10 supports the use of using MDM policies for these. Now, one of the reasons why it's important to note that I've got Windows 10 Pro listed here is that when we talk about upgrade readiness, we're not just talking about upgrading from Windows 7 or Windows 8.1 up to Windows 10. We're also talking about being prepared for that world where, Windows is a service just like Office is already. So we've got the ability to go through and make sure that as new builds of Windows come out, so we've got 1803 in market at the moment, we'll have 1809 becoming available later this year, so that you can actually start specifically targeting the different releases to see what compatibility issues are either introduced or resolved as you jump between the different versions. So let's jump in now and take a look at what's involved after we've got everything configured. So use the information in the previous slide to go through and see what's involved in getting everything ready on the Azure side. But what I'll jump into now is an environment that's very heavily configured so that you can see a lot of data coming through from a lot of machines. Here I've signed into the Azure portal, which we can access by going to portal.azure.com. And all I've done here is gone through and simplified the UI so that we're not getting overwhelmed with information. Instead, all we're really seeing is information around upgrade readiness and update compliance. So as I mentioned, upgrade readiness is really where we want to start to make sure that we can actually get an idea of what's going to be involved in the upgrade process. Now, what you'll see here is that this is coming from a rather large environment. So the sample environment that we've got that's pre-populated, it does have a lot more machines than your typical SMB would have. If we're sort of thinking for Microsoft 365 Business, the largest deployment size is 300 users. We're not talking about an environment where there's 100 plus computers per user. So this is just really an environment that we use so that you can really get some rich information. Now, even on this default landing page, you can see here that we can see how many machines are currently in review. We can see how many are ready to upgrade and how many have got issues that are currently going to potentially be deployment blockers. So it takes a couple of seconds to jump into the next screen so we can see what comes in here. So first up, we'll just give it a second to pull that data in. So it's just advising us that, basically it's telling us that now we've got 6,000 total computers, 2,000 of them in this case have already been upgraded, and 29,000 applications. So this is really going to be, this would actually be quite a large-scale deployment, but as I said, there'll be a lot of useful data that we can see with this. So we can start seeing information around, computers with incomplete data, computers with, outdated updates, what version of Windows we're actually targeting here. So this is an important part of this conversation because we've got this 6-monthly release of Windows, and the general guidance that you'll get is something that I strongly agree with, which is, really target what that latest version of Windows actually is. So we're at the point now where Windows 18.03 is the best version, so it's really the version that you should be targeting. But if for some reason you do need to target a previous version, we can actually set the target version to be an earlier version to see if it's potentially going to be a better option for us at this point in time. But generally I'd advise against that unless you've got some very specific requirements. Now, as we start scrolling across, you'll see that we get reporting on Spectre and Meltdown. So the number of machines that have got vulnerabilities, that have got issues, ones that haven't actually reported anything back, ones that have got the mitigations enabled. So even starting to see things like if there's the ability for it to actually verify the status of the firmware to see if firmware updates have been applied that can actually mitigate those responses. Once we start moving across, so I'm just sort of scrolling across slowly here, you can see here that here we can actually see quite a few apps are installed, so 29,000, but it's saying that only 590 of these applications are in need of review. Because what it does to begin with, it starts eliminating apps that have got a really low installed count. So it may be something that one user installed at one point in time. It may not be something that's part of a corporate image. It may be something that was on an OEM PC image, for example. So this way we can go through and have a bunch eliminated, but we can also go through and start, changing and flagging those, so that if something is important, even if it's got a low install count, we might actually trigger that to say it's actually important, even if it's one person who's using it. If it's the financial app that's being used, then obviously that's something that needs to keep working as we move forward. As we keep moving across, we can look at the issues that need to be resolved. So here what we can start seeing is that, for the apps with known issues, we've got 49 of them, and there are 46 apps with known issues that we actually need to review. So we know that a fix is available for 3 of those. So that could just be, either we know that we're going to be updating to the latest version, or it might be that there's just a minor patch or software update that allows us to actually move to the latest version or to a version that will work well with Windows 10. Similar things here for known driver issues. Now, what's important as we take a look at some of the driver issues is that we'll start identifying things such as which ones are available in box. So which ones will actually be handled when we go through and do that Windows 10 deployment. So this is where you'll see, potentially changing from 1803 to 1709, for example, might actually show you different results for in-box drivers there. So especially if it's newer hardware. Now, also, if there are drivers that we can grab from Windows Update, if there are ones where we need to go out to the vendor and download them specifically, or alternatively, it might be something that, a very unique piece of hardware that Microsoft just doesn't really know about. So they're really going to have to get you to do a little bit more investigation. Here's where we can start seeing the applications and drivers in terms of, what's the support statement. And now once we start taking a look at things like apps that are highly adopted and apps that are adopted, these are categories that the Windows Ready site has created so that we can say, well, if something is highly adopted, it means that X number of thousands of Windows 10 devices are actually running this app successfully. Adopted is obviously going to be a slightly lower number. So this is something where if you are, for some reason, running something a little bit older that you can't update for a particular reason, it may be an older framework, for example, taking a look at this is going to give you a good idea of, as you start drilling in, you'll be able to get an idea of whether these will continue to work moving forward. Now again, we'll keep moving on. So prioritizing the app and driver testing. So here you can see, because I've got it zoomed in so that we can actually see all the text clearly. It's not giving us, full information here, but we've got things like OneDrive up here. So OneDrive's a good example here because something like OneDrive, well, this is something where realistically, as we're moving to the latest version of Office and Windows, any kind of potential issue that OneDrive is going to present is more than likely going to be get resolved either through the Windows upgrade or the Office upgrade. So as we keep moving through, we're now on that final step, so deploying. So what are the apps and the machines that are in need to be addressed? So which ones are being reviewed? Which ones are being which ones are ready to upgrade? So this is effectively what we saw on that previous screen. So this is just that that view at a glance. We can take a look at some of the computer groupings that have been created, and then we can start also taking a look at the monitoring. So how are we actually going through that upgrade process? Because we've gone through and we've tagged and flagged devices, we can see here how many haven't started, how many have completed, how many failures have we got. So rather than it just being something where we're not really hearing anything back until we go and take a look at that device or hear from the user, in this case we're actually getting that information, even things like progress stalled. So why it's something that should be upgrading, but for some reason it's not. Now, we can take a look at driver errors. We can take a look at some of the user feedback capabilities. Now, just before we wrap up in this section, taking a look at the Office add-ins that we've got here, as we scroll across, what you'll see here is that the majority of these are part of, are either things that are part of Office, add-ins to Office from Microsoft, or part of the operating system itself. So these are generally things that are going to be like if they're heavily used, obviously you want to take a look and make sure that there are compatible versions of them as you move forward. Also making sure that even if it's heavily installed, it may not be heavily utilized. So it's something that may initially flag as something you need to be conscious of, but once you start investigating, it may actually not be something that you need to spend too much time on. Now, finally, if you want to go through, and this is really, I guess, more important for organizations that are going to be using that still need to use like some older compatibility modes in the browser. So in this case, you can see things like IE11 document mode, IE7 document mode, IE8 enterprise mode. If you're running older line of business apps and you need to track what's going on, this is really where you'd be able to do that. But I guess one of the goals that we've got with Microsoft 365 Business is moving away from a lot of those legacy type apps that we may have had to use in the past. So hopefully this isn't something that you need to spend a lot of time on. So that's really just a quick view of what we get inside of upgrade readiness. But as you can see, these are all areas that I can click into more detail on. So if there are additional queries that I want to create, I can go through and create custom queries, because as I mentioned earlier, we've got full access to the data that's being collected here. So if I want to go through and start creating my own types of reports, etc., based on this data, this is definitely something that we can do. Thank you for watching this video. For more information on the topics covered, take a look at the links provided as additional resources for these videos, and make sure you check out the other videos in this series.